So, dear learners, I would like to welcome you all to the lecture of Module 9, that is non-tariff. So, in our first lecture, we have discussed about the objectives of import quotas, why import quotas is imposed by various countries participate in international trade. So, one of the important objectives of imposing import quota is it helps to reduce the dumping. Now, what is dumping and how import quotas help to reduce dumping? So that is why in this lecture we will discuss about dumping and the role of WTO in anti-dumping. So whether the dumping is ethical, how dumping affect the gain from trade to the countries involved in international trade, and how World Trade Organization helps to adopt anti-dumping measures so that that good relation can be prevailed among the participating countries. Now, let me start with what dumping is exactly about. The term dumping refers to the practice where exporters or businesses lower the price of a product in the international market. So these prices are often what they basically do, they fix the price below what the product cost in the exporter's home country, and in some cases even below the cost of production. So what they basically do, they basically resort to the process, they basically adopt the process of dumping to capture larger market share. So that is why to offset these lower prices in the foreign market, the exporter may charge higher prices to domestic consumers. So this strategy aims to capture a larger share of international market, which is long-term goal of dominating the market and ensuring substantial future profit. So initially what happened, consumers are drawn to the cheaper imported goods as they are priced lower than the domestic alternative. But over time, as local businesses lost demand for their products, many may be forced out of the market. Obviously, what will happen if the local producer are not able to providing the product at a very at a competitive price as provided by the imported goods, then obviously they may forced to out of the market, which will reduce competition. So this leads to weakening or elimination of domestic competition. So as a result, once the local competition is gone, the exporter definitely they gains monopoly power and can increase the prices. So in some cases, the exporter may receive government support in the form of subsidies, duty rebates, and cash incentive. Now, under World Trade Organization rule, dumping is generally considered illegal unless it can be demonstrated that it harmed the domestic producers of the importing country. Now, if evidence of such harm referred as which we can refer as injurious effect is found, the practice is deemed illegal and anti-dumping duty is imposed. So this duty is typically equal to the price difference between the exporter's home market and host country's market. So what is the difference? Is used as an anti-dumping basis. So it will increase the price of the imported goods to the level of the goods as provided by the local producer. So it will be better if we can explain dumping with the help of some empirical examples. And examples of dump can be given where a dumping occurred in 1990s involving Japanese automaker and US car market. So during this period, what happened? Japanese car manufacturers such as Toyota and Honda were able to export car to to the US at prices significantly lower than the cost of production in Japan. So that the car was sold in the US at prices that were considerably cheaper than those of US manufacturers like General Motors and Ford. So ultimately, what happened? This strategies allowed Japanese automaker to capture a larger share of the US market for vehicles despite higher cost of production in Japan. The US automobile industry claimed that this practice of dumping was harming domestic manufacturers as consumers increasingly preferred more affordable, fuel-efficient car from Japan. So this led to rise in unemployment and reduction in the market share of US automakers. Now, what the US government do in response to that to protect their domestic producers to put some restriction in the rise of unemployment, what they did, the US government took action in the form of anti-dumping duties and voluntary export restraint agreement. As a result, in 1981, Japan agreed to limit the number of cars it exported to the US as a part of the deal to prevent further trade disputes. So eventually, what happened? The US imposed tariff on some Japanese vehicles to counteract the perceived harm caused by the dumping of cheap cars into the market. So another classic example of dumping is the lumber example of dumping, which is very famous in the literature. This is basically happens between USA and Canada. The USA and Canada softwood lumber dispute is it is a classic example of dumping. Now, if you see the how this incident occurs, the background actually, Canada used to export a large amount of softwood lumber to the US. Now, US lumber industry has long, they have long accused Canadian product of selling lumber at unfairly low prices in the US market, which is basically they claim that this is basically a dumping. Now the US claims that Canadian lumber producers receive government subsidies, particularly in the form of cheap access to public forest, allowing them to sell lumber at lower prices than US producer. Now, how it works, how the dumping mechanism works, because basically the domestic price in Canada is high. Canadian farm sells lumber at a higher price in the home market, but what happens? The export price in the US is low. The same farm will sell lumber at a lower price in the US due to subsidies and a desire to outpace American producers. Now, the third stage is, it has an impact on US producers. So ultimately what happens? Cheap Canadian lumber flood in the US market, hurting domestic sawmills and leading to job losses in the American timber industries. Now we have to see what is the US response, that is anti-dumping duties. So to counteract this, the US government imposed anti-dumping duties and tariff to Canadian softwood lumber import. So this tariff increased the price of Canadian lumber in the US market, making it more expensive and reducing its competitive advantage. So this protests US lumber companies, but raises the cost of this. Obviously, this protect the US lumber companies, but what happens? It raises the cost of housing and construction in the US. Now, after giving these two examples, we have an idea regarding what is dumping and how anti-dumping measures are adopted by the countries across the globe. Now, if you see the both sides, dumping has both advantages and disadvantages also. So, if you If you point out what are the advantages of dumping, we can give some advantages. The first advantage is, dumping helps to enables the home country to capture international market, because what they basically do, it is advantage at the cost of disadvantage for the importing country. The host country can capture international market because they can sell the product at a lower price as compared to the market price, and they can capture the market. The second advantage of impose dumping is, it contributes to job creation in the home country, that is, which adopt dumping, which sells the product at a lower price in the international market, because that will create demand in the international market. To meet that demand, they need to produce more. To produce more, they have to create employment. So that is why ultimately it will lead to increase in job creation in the home country. So that is why it is considered as an advantage for the home country. It also strengthened the home country's global industries position by reducing competition. This is obvious. This is basically corollary of the second objectives, which I have already discussed. The fourth advantage of imposing dumping is that it provides a temporary benefit to consumers in the host country by offering product at a lower prices. So that is an advantage. A part of the country, importing country, because it due to dumping, the consumers are able to get prices at a low, able to get commodities at a lower prices. So these are basically the advantages of dumping. Now, what are the disadvantages of dumping? The disadvantages of dumping, are basically the consumers in the home country may face disadvantage also, because in case of dumping, what happen? The companies who resort dumping is basically to capture more market share. So that is why what they basically do, they sell the commodity in the domestic market at a competitive price, which is quite comparatively high, but the same product they sell in the foreign market comparatively at a lower price. So ultimately, so from that angle, we can say that consumers in the home country may face disadvantage in the higher price of the commodity. Again, another disadvantage of dumping is, dumping is basically to resort to dumping to capture international market. The companies or the producer, what they do, they take some kind of subsidies from the government so that they can offer the commodity in the foreign market at a comparatively lower price. So ultimately, it involves, government has to incur cost, often covered by taxpayers' money through subsidies. So that is why it is considered as another disadvantages of dumping. Country may take years to recover or collapse. What happened in domestic industries in the home country may take times to recover, because if you see, due to imposition of dumping, what happened? The importing country, for the importing country, the consumers may avail the product at a lower price, but for the producers, there is a possibility that they may collapse or they may not able to recover. And dumping, as it is very obvious that due to dumping there may be trade conflict between the nations, because this is not a fair kind of practices, and as a result, this is not fair, and it will create some kind of conflict between the participating countries. Now, another important disadvantage of dumping is that the host country, that is with the country which take those kind of measures, may face sanction from international organizations such as UN, United Nations, and World Trade Organization. Now, since from our above discussion, since we have already understood that although dumping is used by the companies or producers or exporters to capture the market share, or which indirectly help to consumers in terms of lower price of the product, but since it has an impact on the producers of the importing countries. So that is why there will be some kind of restriction is needed for restriction of dumping. So that is why we need to discuss the role of WTO in anti-dumping. So the WTO, which is a successor of the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, that is GATT, which was established in 1947 to promote international trade by reducing tariff and other trade barriers. Now, while GATT initially sought to create an open global trading system, it was largely forced on reducing tariff. Over time, however, a global trade became more complex. The WTO was created in 1995 to take on a broader range of issues, including services, intellectual property, and trade-related disputes. So this is how GATT then WTO. Now, most countries are now member of WTO, and they are required to adhere to, or they are required to maintain its rules and principles, which aims to foster a balanced and fair global trading environment. Now, how WTO as a global organization play a significant role in regulating dumping. So that is why one of the significant issue of WTO is considered is address the problem of dumping, which can distort fair competition in international market. So dumping occurs when, and as I have already explained, an exporter sells product in a foreign market at a price lower than its domestic price and sometimes even below the cost of production. So basically, it is basically applied to capture the larger market share, drive domestic producers out of the business, and create a monopoly in the importing country. So that is why dumping can harm the industries of the importing country by undercutting local businesses and disrupting local market. So that is why, to regulate the practice, the WTO has established a comprehensive framework for dealing with anti-dumping measures. So countries that believe they have been the victim of dumping can apply, or they can use or impose anti-dumping duties on imported goods to protect their domestic industries. However, what happens? The WTO requires that the specific condition be met before anti-dumping duties can be imposed. Ensure that such action are not taken without clear evidence of harm. So WTO must ensure that before anti-dumping duties imposed, such there should be some kind of clear evidence of harm. Now, what are the key principles of anti-dumping under the WTO? Under the WTO framework, the imposition of anti-dumping duties is only permissible if the country requesting the duties can demonstrate that dumping has occurred and it has caused harm to domestic industries. Otherwise, it is not allowed. The WTO defines dumping, that is why the WTO defines dumping in a specific term to ensure clarity in its application. Now, how they define? First, the importing country must prove that the dumped goods are being sold at a price lower than what they are sold for the exporter's domestic market. The WTO, that is a World Trade Organization, requires three specific price calculation to determine whether dumping has occurred. Now, what is the first one? The price in the exporter's domestic market. This is the price at which goods are sold with the exporting countries. Next, the price charged by the exporter in importing country. What is the price? This is the price at which goods are being sold in the foreign market. That means we have now get two price in the domestic market, exporter's domestic market, and price in the importing country. Now, the next issue which you have to consider, the exporter's production cost and reasonable profit margin. So this calculation ensures that the price at which goods are being sold in the foreign market is compared to the actual cost of production, taking into account a reasonable profit margin for the exporter. So that is why before imposing anti-dumping or before imposing sanction in terms of anti-dumping, what WTO used to do, they try to consider three price: the price in the exporter's domestic market, that means the price at which commodities are available for the domestic consumers of the exporting country. Now the price charged by the exporter in the importing country, that is the price at which commodity is available for the consumers for the importing country, and exporters production cost and reasonable profit margin, whether the price at which they offer the product in the importing country covers both production cost and reasonable profit margin. So that is why the importing country must also demonstrate what the normal price for the product should be based on this calculation. Only once this requirements are met, then a country can institute anti-dumping duties in accordance with WTO rules, ensuring that this measures does not violate international trade agreement under GATT. Now, in conclusion, what we can say, WTO plays a crucial role in promoting fair and balanced international trade by ensuring that the member countries maintain or adhere to agreed upon rules. So its regulation on anti-dumping practices are central to preventing unfair competition and protecting domestic industries from harmful trade practices. So by requiring clear evidence of harm and establishing specific criteria for proving dumping, the WTO, what they do, they helps to maintain a level playing field in the global market. So the cases like Canadian lumber disputes, the automobile, the cases of Japan and US automobile dispute, it basically illustrate practical application of those rules, demonstrating the World Trade Organization commitment to resolving trade conflict and ensuring compliance with international trade agreement. So ultimately, the World Trade Organization work in regulating dumping ensures that global trade remained equitable, open, and free from distortion, benefiting both consumers and producers